When women leaders are around, organizations prosper, grow well, hire right talent, retain right talent, and grow the organization exponentially. I welcome all the distinguished leaders who joined in from all the places. Welcome Dipti, who's going to moderate our session. Dipti happens to be global head of HR of Taskers. Recently, she stepped down and moving into another organization. She's the one going to be moderating. Welcome, Vinaya. Vinaya works for Northern Trust as one of the senior VPs, and Melina. Melina is from Kyndryl. I don't know how many of you know about Kyndryl. Kyndryl is the company originated from IBM. Then Tash, we have Tash has joined from South Africa. Great to have you, Tash. Really privileged to have you. We'll kickstart the session. Looking forward for great insights and great conversations. And the delegates, if you have any questions, any point in time, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. And if you want to ask any question to any of the speakers, you can address it to them. Great delegates who joined in from all over the world to have this. Really appreciate your time that you have taken during the office hours to share your thoughts and experiences. So much with this, I invite Deepti Rishi, who's going to moderate the Women Leadership Roundtable of Session 2, covering EMEA, Latin America, and like North America. And of course, we have Vinaya joining from India as well. Great. How to you, Deepti?
Thank you very much, Dr. Shiva. It's been a fantastic discussion earlier in the day. And a brief introduction to me, I'm based in Gurgaon, have more or less over 2 decades of HR experience, worked with brands like Genpact, Aon, and then I decided to change and rediscover life, as they call it. I guess at some point in time, we all must do it. It's an awakening. You really get to understand what you want to do in the future. And that's exactly where I'm headed. So by about the next month beginning, I'll be starting off my new stint, which will give me just the right platform to do what I've always dreamed of. So that's me in a nutshell. And then let's start to introduce the topic. Yeah, diversity. Started off with equality and inclusion. Today we are at equity, inclusion, and belongingness. So yeah, going back, what started as a women empowerment movement and a lot of policies made to make sure that women get their due and equal opportunity. Today the way we look at diversity and inclusion is very different. What started off as demographics only, whether it was male-women, male-female ratios versus or people from different ethnic groups, and I use it everywhere I go, that the difference between diversity and inclusion is basically diversity is the head count, and inclusion is making the heads count. Right. So I think that's where the crux is. Understanding how we are different, understanding why we need to include everybody. I think that's the major change that has happened. And are we glad that that's happened? Right. So how does this function for your region, and how do you feel that things have changed over a period of time? Or have they really changed, or is it just social media that is really talking about the change? Yeah, so let's start with Jacqueline, and we'll come to the others. Yeah, Jacqueline, over to you.
Awesome, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Jacqueline Smith, almost 13, 14 years of experience in WFM. And one thing that it will be characteristic about Jackie is just the passion that I put in everything that I do in terms of WFM. And I'm going to start answering this question by just throwing in there some thoughts that really brought up to me when I well, when I question to myself, how is that the diversity landscape has changed over the years? So one interesting fact, it was when I finished high school, I told my parents, well, I think I need to study an engineer career. I don't know which one it is. I want to make sure that it's the most difficult one because as a woman, I want to be able to create a huge impact. So in there, I ended up landing in a classroom full of 35 guys and only maximum 5 women in the classroom. So that was the first interesting thought in there. Secondly, I can tell you that when I was starting the WFM career back in 2010, 2011, wherever I saw like all leaders, all members in WFM around me, if I wanted to look up, if I wanted to look at the same line where I was, I only saw men. I was like, the third interesting thought is that by that time, maybe because the LATAM region was not as evolved as it was in other geos, all the BPO experience, WFM support and background. Wherever I saw WFM, it was this little small group where almost nobody actually saw anybody in WFM. We were only known as the team that were good in Excel, that we were good in macros. Let's not talk to them. They are not sociable at all. So I was like, man, those three interesting thoughts really brought a perspective in, wow, something different needs to happen here. Because if we want to see something different in the future, we need to start with us. So that's when I told myself, I need to start opening doors. I need to start telling people that sky is not the limit, and I need to start building something different. Need to start showing the world that in WFM, in LATAM region, we could do something different. And actually, we were as diverse as not only macro skills, not only Excel, not only coding. And that's what really put the passion on building great teams, on building teams in which we didn't only needed to have people expert in Excel, in codes, etc. But that's when I started to have artists, when I started to have social workers, when I started to have people that in the middle of their different perspectives, their different backgrounds, they felt that they had an opinion in WFM. They saw an opportunity in growing within the team. And that's something that really created a big difference, created that big change. So I am sure that with those three thoughts that I had right there, almost everybody was able to see the same experience in different teams, in different landscapes. But today, one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody is that they change in terms of how is that we are accepting diversity in the workplace. It starts with us. It starts on what is the goal that we want for us, that we want for the team, and how is that we are able to translate, to involve, and make sure that everybody has that sense of belonging, that I can do something different here, that but I don't have all the Excel skills. I might not have all the macro skills. I might not be right now at the point of having all that detail-oriented skill, but I'm gonna do my best because guess what? I have part of the skills that will be important to make this team shine and shine big time. So that's the contribution that I wanted to share with everybody today in how I saw the diversity change within the LATAM region.
I think you brought out one very important aspect, which I think somewhere we kind of forget to highlight, and that is that diversity is not just about men, women, gender, race, etc., etc. It's also about the work that we do and the unconscious bias that people have about certain work. For example, a lot of people think that HR is just about, having engagement activities and fun at work, etc. And when you talk to them that, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this because I'm a little tied up or a little busy. And the first thing is, oh, really? What are you busy with? HR never works, right? So, these kind of biases, and I'm glad you brought that up, because even within the organization, let alone the human race as such, but even within an organization, within the departments, I don't think this evolution of accepting or including all groups or all different verticals is there, and giving them the importance that they really bring to the table. Tash, any comments from you on this?
Yeah, actually, quite a few. I've taken back some key points, but just to do a quick intro, I'm Tash. I am out here in South Africa. I've been in the WFM sort of industry for the last 10 years now, so you can call me the new sort of the new gen. So when I started 10 years ago, I've had like a lot of forward management. There was no diverse management. It was one way. There's only one way you could go when you manage people. And I think the evolution on leadership has brought about a cultural shock in today's organizations, particularly in the workforce industry. To Jacqueline's point, we associate gender with roles quite often. In WFM, it's supposed to be a man's world, but actually it's revolutionized to be a diverse community. Gender equality has staged its approach over the years. And I think what we've done well is found evolution in making women or allowing women to have a seat at the table. I don't think we should always use one approach, because sometimes what works for one is not going to work for the other. What I strongly believe in and I set in as a value, doesn't matter your ethnicity, it doesn't matter your cultural background, it doesn't matter where you've come from, you should be able to have a platform to voice your opinion and share your idea. Yeah. So when I look at sort of your feedback, Deepti, on the HR stuff, I feel the same. Often enough, when we relate departments or we relate an organization, we boil down to it should only operate in this one way. It should only ever be this. If I need to call HR, they need to be at my beck and command because I am more important. But I think what we don't sit back and understand is what influences we could have on the organization by looking at things culturally different. And I think where we are now is definitely not where we're going to be in the next 10 years, because I am I'm a young mom. So there's a lot of if I can just shift to being a young mom versus the way my mom is with me, and how I was brought up, I was not watching telly and Cocomelon at 6 months and 8 months old, but I find my kid like attracted to the colors and that's what he likes. And I noticed that he's picking up things a lot faster. And if I can just play that back into our organizations and the way we learn, when we hire and recruit, it used to be a pen and paper exercise and a classroom exercise. Now it's different. There's a virtual, you go through a virtual tour, you go to team building exercise, you're using different environments. You're not stuck in a four wall sort of environment. So I think what has contributed to our success over the years and our evolution change and being a more diverse and more open-minded society is that we have embraced its culture. A lot of people went through a culture shock over the years. We know that social media has helped fuel some of the positive and negatives, but I think what we did well was absorb that the world is changing. And if we want to be successful, we need to get on that change, and we need to drive the right influence And we need to take ownership of the way we react to certain situations and be open to judgment, number one, but also be open to be criticized. I think back in the day, it was, you're not allowed to be criticized, you're not allowed to share your experiences. I embrace my colleagues and my team especially, and my successes when they try and challenge me back, because I know they're thinking differently, and I know they're trying to help me think differently. And I think with that succession point in itself, you know, we want to pave that way forward. We're talking about our future generations. We're talking about what we want to see for our kids and our nieces, our nephews. And if we want to continue moving in a forward direction, we need to be able to change the way we used to think and how philosophy and how I envision things. I'm a young mom. I'm an experienced sort of professional in the WFM vertical, but I think it's just not limited to your profession and what you know. I think it's thinking differently as a whole.
Absolutely. And, like you said, the landscape is changing even with the kind of people that we are hiring, right? With the new generation. And I know, whenever we talk about generations, the concept of generation changes. Earlier, it was 33 years to a generation. I think now it's 6 years and it's a new generation that we're talking about. Of course, it's not in the books, but in the thought process and in what they're exposed to. 10 years, 15 years, it's very difficult to somewhere get the same kind of thought process. So let's talk a little more about this. I have a 25-year-old boy, and growing up, it was it took heaven and earth to help me, curb my age-old instincts of let's not do it this way. And it was difficult to continuously ask the child, okay, so how do you want to do it? And listening harder to the way they're changing and learning from them. A lot of us are very resistant in making that change and making that learning change that is there. Now, with the way our learners or our employees are changing, their thought process is changing, the way they learn, the way they function is totally different. Even their concentration doesn't go beyond 3 minutes, and that's saying a lot. Like 3 minutes is a lot. So my question to the panel here, that how do you think, when we function in an organization where we have diversity in terms of different ages as well, we have people from different walks of life who come in, but we all want them to be on the same platform and same understanding of our values. How is that changing? How are we changing the reality for them in terms of learning? Added to that, I do want to ask one more question, that do we think we really evolved in terms of our understanding of inclusion, right? Or are we still going to reach there? And how is this kind of learning going to help us to change that landscape? Vinay, over to you. That's a lot of questions there.
Okay. I thought I was trying to be a little cool with the headset on, but all right. So let me first of all introduce myself. I'm Vinaya Manjunatha. Unlike a lot of y'all with very specific experiences in workforce management, I am a very, very operational person here at the table. So probably you might hear a different version of perspectives being shared from me. So I come with around 20 years of experience in the banking sector, been with financial servicing industry all my life and been in operations all my life. So a short profile, unlike you, Deepti, not very diverse with the profile. So that's about me. But I think there's some interesting perspectives. So it's great to be a part of this panel with all these interesting perspective being shared, right? Creating a seat at the table, what Jacqueline and Tash talked about, and Deepti, you're talking about a new venture in your life in itself, which is very interesting to hear. So coming back to your question around inclusion. It has to be, it is a topic that we probably in the last few years has changed and evolved significantly. And the reason why I say that is earlier anything about diversity and inclusion was very specific to numbers. There was a target, and it's always about the target, and that's what most organizations would focus on. But now that's changed. The dynamics of what we do in terms of diversity is not just limiting to numbers, but it's really expanded its scope and evolved in the last decade or so. I've seen things when we were talking about this is the gender ratio that you'll need to have within your organization. So that now is the scope or the way the journey has evolved in different organizations, could be at different levels. But what we see now is that's probably a minimum ask, but then that's now changing to a different dynamics around the different spectrums of diversity, including hiring veterans, LGBT, people with disability, generation diversity, hiring regional diversity. These are different spectrums. And to really have that broader reach as an organization, it's not just about having a vision is enough, right? For us to position ourselves for a long-term growth, and to keep that being a futuristic model, it's also important to acquire, develop, retain talent in the long run. So I think there should be a lot of effort in that direction. From an organization that I come from, I see a lot of these are top down, but it also is a part of the leadership objective to really drive some of these as a part of our organization or our business that we drive within the organization. So how we really have defined these within our culture is about, of course, you talked about training. The way we are going to be really focusing on probably the training that we did last few years is very, very different from the new generation requirement that we have for the new generation that we are factoring in, right? But from our perspective, what we've seen is the investment in people, the investment in culture, and the marketplace really plays a huge, huge difference to promote the idea of integrating our current talent, diversity talent, and also what we want to visualize in terms of our future need, keeping in mind the new gen that we're talking about, right? I'm just picking up one example. Very, very recently, we were talking about taking some feedback in terms of some of the specific trainings that we conducted. We know for the fact that this could probably be a mandatory training, and therefore people are forced to take these training sessions. But this does not make a big impact. And Deepti, I'll give you an example. When we do new hire training in Northern Trust, the organization that I am in, we talk about all the aspects that we have in terms of people development, upskilling, etc. And what we've seen the change is we have a program within the organization which talks about workforce diversity. And interestingly, these are not mandatory courses. Okay, we talk about it in our onboarding program, but the uptick in the numbers that we see is significantly high. That's because people have that mindset, which probably we were trying to build that mindset a few years back. Now it's not. It's a mandate from an organization standpoint, from a generation that we are working in, right? And these are not courses that we've developed as your long hours of training sessions. These are capsule modules, and people are willing to take. And we just talk about it in the induction, and when we come back and take a look at how the numbers have changed, I think there's a significant, there's a better appreciation in the generation. Let's keep it that way, right? So the way the people look at diversity is really not limited to gender alone. alone, it's changed in the larger scheme of things in the last decade. I can definitely talk about. So we have multiple interventions to really equip not just the generation that we are working with, but also the the managerial layer, right? It's also about inclusive leadership curriculum that's been introduced for various levels. Therefore, the acceptance of hiring such people with diverse background is also important. So we need to know how do we handle different inclusive perspective, right? So I think that also is the key element as a part of our ongoing effort to really support and get better in terms of diversifying our workforce. Culturally as well, I think there's a lot of effort that we do in terms of holding that accountability across levels. So there's massive effort. If I have to really summarize and answer your question, are we in the right direction? Probably yes. Has it made a huge dent? It's going to take a lot of time, right? It's going to take time to we were looking at some diverse hiring, and just last year we had around 80 people that we've hired from diverse spectrum of people. That may not look like a significant number change, but that had to be a lot of effort to drive that, have the right vendors. Are we equipped, sensitizing our teams, our organization, the way we interview, policies, everything, right? There's a whole panel of things that needs to be looked beforehand. So yeah, we are taking that footsteps smaller, but definitely making a huge change and a lot of effort for sure.
Super. You brought out an important part that earlier we were just pushing targets. And the moment something like diversity and inclusion, or forget diversity also, but when inclusion becomes a target, then it is not heartfelt. And invariably, it becomes more of a mandate than really an effort to make it happen. An example, again, I share a lot from what I learned from my son. He is in Canada, and he just started working in a company about a year ago. And after 2 months, he was very excited, telling me that he was the highest performer and stuff like that. And he said, through all of this, I feel very sad for one thing. And that is that, my manager once told me that I was a diversity hire. And for him to be told that he was a diversity hire, and he was hired because he was an Indian, was a huge, huge disrespect. And he felt that, so you didn't hire me for my skills. You didn't think I was good enough. You just hired me because I had a certain surname, or my passport belonged to a certain country. And that's again something that I would want to hear from Milena, that are we really ready? Are we sensitizing our people, especially the mid-management, the senior management, on how to deal with this? Yes, diversity is important. It's important to hire people from different backgrounds, etc. But why are we doing this? And do we really need to tell people that, you there, diversity hire? So are we really ready for this at the moment? Milena, over to you.
Thank you, Dipti. So my name is Melina Orue. I am currently located in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I work for Kyndryl, and Kyndryl is the spin-off of IBM. We split like a year and a half ago, but I've been in the industry for, this year is going to be 20 years. And it's funny because Jacqueline mentioned, that in different backgrounds, right? From people or diversity in terms of the thoughts. And actually, I do not come from workforce management. What I've been doing is actually everything that you can think of. At least what when I joined IBM, I started like an assistant of an assistant. And then I have been doing different things across the world. I have been supporting the business. I have been working in operations, in education, in service quality, with account management, in workforce management. Then I went back to delivery, where we actually delivered services to the clients, and then came back at the time of the spin-off. So actually it gives you a broader perspective. I mean, when we are discussing, I mean, I'm hiring today artists, I'm having different people with different backgrounds. Actually, that is exactly my case, right? I mean, coming to a team with a different perspective, when you have done and you have been working with actually the people that you have to support all over the place. And when I talk to my team today, they have done the same. None of the team, or practically nobody, started in workforce management. They start in supporting mainframe, somewhere apart, even in the help desk, or they have started in HR or finance or different backgrounds. And then we all come together within our workforce management, and everyone can give a different perspective, right? Exactly what you're doing, because sometimes you're also closer to the client or the internal client or the stakeholder that you need to support, because you have been in those shoes before and you know their pain points, and you need also the problems that you need to solve. So in that case, I mean, diversity of thought, I mean, or backgrounds is very rich, right? I mean, that the discussions that we are having, I mean, sometimes you see the problem from your perspective. When you have those discussions, when all the team with that diverse background, believe me, that actually brings, it takes you to the next step. Otherwise, if we are all the same group with the same background, the same thing, only a few ideas are going to come up because you are limited for the background and the knowledge that you have. So that is something that is really working well, and that is a benefit that everyone, I think, that is realizing. To your point regarding how we evolve, right? And if today we are ready to come to that point, I think that is an evolution. When I started 20 years ago, it was everything about ratings. So we need to hire this amount of women, we need to hire this amount of EPA. I mean, you have different metrics, and everyone was measured on that, and you have objectives that you have to hit in that kind of stuff. I think that is an evolution, right? I mean, I think that the cultural change and the generation change is bringing us to that diversity inclusion. I think that people realize, and the comment that you have made on your son, Dipti, actually something the same that I think, right? I mean, because I was to be in meetings at the beginning of my career, we was a room of 20 managers, all men and me, right? So say, and in many cases, they'll say, oh, you're the token, right? You're the women that you are here to look us better, right? And even in LA, you have that, I think that as Jacqueline was saying, that you have that still makeshift culture that still they think that you have many women. I mean, in some cases, it depends, right? I mean, in technical teams, most are going to be guys, because most of them are the ones that were following technical careers. Also, naturally, the percentage is like that. So all the women get to marketing, HR, I mean, those support functions, right? I mean, that is how you get that balance. Now, even when you're in your teams, not so much today, but in the past, what used to happen was that you have all those women in there, but the managers or the directors were still men, right? Even though they were the minority or they were equal in those teams. So I think that the evolution, I mean, is natural. I mean, not only through the new generation, you're just going to still have managers say, hey, you're the diversity hire, right? Because you need to strike that balance too, because things are not going to change by themselves. You need sometimes to have a push, right? I mean, to get it to the right direction. But on the other hand, you also need to change the culture for people themselves to think that diversity is good. Because what I explained, right? I mean, when we have these discussions, in our team are so rich because everyone comes from different perspectives, right? I mean, being everyone from the same background and the same kind of ideas is only going to get you one way.
Yeah, and like they say, if you continue to hire just one kind of people, you will continue to get the same kind of results.
The same answer, the same proposal, the same answer, the same answers to the problems, right? I mean, you don't have anyone that is seeing that from a different perspective that can give you a different answer to what you need to solve.
Yeah, and I think these are boundaries that we have set on our own for ourselves. Whether these boundaries really exist, that's another discussion altogether. Vinaya, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, so I was just talking about some of these sensitization program, right? It doesn't have to really, when we are looking at hiring a specific category of diversity, there's a lot of work that has to go through to get them on board. It's not as simple as you go to a vendor and start hiring. It's not as simple as that, right? There's a lot of pre-work, including getting the specific, let's say I'm hiring this candidate and I need to be trained, I need to be equipped. For example, just the fact that somebody's telling that you're a diversity hiring, should I even make a statement like that, is also something that I need to be sensitized, right? We always assume or presume that this is something that people should know, but no, we all come with our own biases. So there's that element of sensitization which needs to happen at multiple levels, including, let's say, a talent acquisition if they're hiring a specific category of people. So I think that plus all the preparation that is needed to hire the respective, is there any intervention program? Is there some kind of awareness that needs to be built? I think there's multiple that needs to be factored before you really prep up and say, okay, now we are ready. Yeah. And probably that's what leads the journey a little more slower.
Yeah. And that readiness is very important, not just in mindset, but it's very simple, even from a physical standpoint. Do we have the right toilets? Do we have the right ramp for, let's say, a person with disabilities? Somebody who is visually impaired, do we have the right, wherewithal, which is going to be conducive to somebody? The flip side is also true, and I'll give you an example that happened in my last organization. My executive assistant is a transgender, and a very proud one at that. The first day she came to office, and she met us all and everything. She went to her manager, and her manager, one of the best that is there in the industry, always problem solving, very sensitive to the needs and very inclusive in her conversations, etc. So this youngster went to her and said, okay, so which loo do you want me to go to? Which washroom should I be using? And she was taken aback and she says, oh yeah, we haven't thought about it. Well, there's the handicapped bathroom, which is unisex, you can use it. And, this one just turned around and said, but I'm not handicapped. So why should I be using that? Sometimes when we are trying to help also, that sensitization is extremely important. A reality check that I'm trying to solve for it. And, but am I doing the right thing by that? Which brings me to the other point, which I'm a little passionate about, and that is reverse bias. A lot of us talk about unconscious bias. We don't want to hire a certain kind. And I remember in India, when the entire, anti-sexual harassment law came in, the first reaction which we got both from men as well as women in the organization was, I don't want to hire women anymore. Because, you never know with these kind of laws, you never know what's going to happen. And that's the unconscious bias. Now, it more or less became a conscious bias. But a lot of times when we are trying to solve for these biases and trying to make efforts towards being more inclusive towards people, we end up forgetting the other side, which is the majority. And here, this could be men, this could be straight people, this could be anybody who's not what we call a diversity hire. An example here again, and this happened to me, it was my awakening moment where we had different shifts, and typically, all the single women or the men got the late evening or the night shifts. And after 3 months of continuous night shifts, one of my team members came to me and she said, because I'm single, I don't have a sick child or an old mother-in-law or a cranky husband at home. I don't deserve evenings to myself. Why would you do that? I need a shift where I can go home, just plonk myself in front of the TV and watch TV. What's wrong with that? And that was really an awakening to me, because in order to help the other women manage their life and their careers, I was forgetting that the others have an equal right to being more comfortable, right? And that's where equity comes. So I'll go back to Jacqueline and Tash. Any thoughts on reverse bias, and do we tend to forget that there is that other element as well?
Well, Tash, if you want to go ahead, I will close down. I have a couple of ideas, but go ahead.
No, you go on, Jacqueline, and then I'll piggyback off you.
Perfect. So in terms of reverse bias, Deepti, one of the things that I strongly believe it's something that will help in make that difference. It's going to be education. I am a strong believer that education is something that makes a tremendous change. And I can even remember a quote from Oprah that says, education is the key to unlock the world, and it is the passport to freedom. The companies, we have diversity, we have equity, we have inclusion conversations. That's where we are going to rehearse, and that's what is going to make easy to move the knowledge from conscious to subconscious. So when you move that knowledge to subconscious, it's what make the practice a little easier. But I don't believe this is something that it will be considered as a project. It's not going to be something that will have a start and an end date. It's going to be a process. And it's going to be a process that we will need to keep talking throughout the years as everybody keeps bringing a different perspective, keeps bringing a different opinion into the table. So that would be my point in terms of reverse bias. It's just to make sure that we create learning experiences, we create training programs in which, again, it's all there to promote equity. That will be the only way that we can reinforce culture, that we can put the foundations where they need to be. And again, that can make the practice easier and not awkward for people. So that will be my point of view there.
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. And yes, again, we come back to the same thing: education, and just sensitizing a lot of us on how we need to operate. Tash, over to you.
I'm gonna flip the script a little, and I'm gonna think with my WFM cap and my sort of specialist cap here. I think, in my opinion, I'm going to go straight for, if we do not look at things in a diverse way and we do not look at all objectives, what are we doing for the business? You could be losing your talent for attrition. You could be losing your talent to other business because you're not including these in your standard operating processes. As an example, I wear my heart on my sleeve when it comes to WFM. And I've got principles and governance measures that are in place from a scheduling aspect, from a rotational aspect. And one of the key things I stick by and I live by is creating a work-life balance. We want to be an organization and we want to revolutionize the industry, call center industry, as a work-life balance industry. We're not factory workers. We need to maintain, retain, and educate the skill we have and cultivate it so we can stand for great things. So in my opinion, I think that whilst we do need the education point, Jacqueline, that's 100% it. We pull in our training department. What are some of we send out surveys? What are some of the key things that's happening in our business? That's why we've got these beautiful departments, right? We've got the engagement teams. You got your training. You got your talent teams. We've got the right support positioned almost perfectly across the organization and in every organization. You wouldn't hear from an engagement team back in the day, right? But we've got them today. The reason we have these people positioned so perfectly is because we want to understand what are our frontline, our hard workers talking about, what's on their radar, how do we do things differently? And most of my scheduling techniques have come from feedback and surveys that we positioned out to the business. We want to hear everyone. We want to know from a mass majority population what works for them. And you get your buy-in and you see a return on investment. That is where you see your return on investment, and you see your tenure, but you also see your business evolving, and you get recognized for having these values, and you can quantify these values because you've got tangible sort of evidences to say, this is what we've done, this is how it worked really well. Or if it didn't, hey, how do we go back to the drawing board and make a success out of it? So, like that's how I weigh in, and obviously this is just me thinking like a WFM professional, like a business person. What do we want to do for our people, and how do we want to be inclusive but also differentiate ourselves in the industry?
Absolutely. And just one part of it is not it's not just education, but yeah, what I feel is that if we let go of understanding or listening harder, the ear to the ground, I think that's the point you were trying to make, Tash, that if we don't have our ear to the ground, we're going to miss out on points that that the people are trying to tell. And where do they tell us finally is on Glassdoor when they've left. So you don't even have a chance to go back and make amends to what they want or they wanted, right? So having the ear to the ground, very, very important. Vinay and Melinda, would you like to add anything to the reverse bias conversation?
So I can just tell you that I work night shift. I've been working night shift for the past 15 years, and I'm a late person. I cannot wake up. If you expect me to do a morning shift and talk, I would be sleep talking, right? So, and I have teams round the clock. So my teams support right from the start of the day till the next day morning. So, and interestingly enough, Deepti, I have a good 50% presence in North America shift who are women. And that's not a choice because they didn't have an option, but they feel that when I do my comparison in terms of attrition, I think it's lesser in North America versus, interestingly, versus my EMEA or my APAC hours, right? So that's a very different spin to what we've been talking about. Sometimes I really like what Tash was talking about. I think reverse mentoring or hearing from people is so critical. We tend to always assume that, probably it's an assumption that women may not prefer to do a night shift. I would only prefer to do a night shift. So that's me, right? Even today, I think I volunteered. I was doing a mid shift, but I volunteered to say, can I be a part of take on some additional responsibility, do a late coverage, which I started doing. So sometimes I think these are things that we unconsciously believe that it could be because, okay, a woman, she may not be able to do a night shift, or a mother, she's going the family way and therefore she may not want to come back to work, right, after her maternity leave. So we will have all these, but I think it's always important to recognize hearing it from the person than presuming this could be the case, right? We've had instances where we've promoted people despite being in the maternity leave period, right? We've had opportunities, and it came as an interesting spin where partners walked in to say, you know what, Vinaya, that was the last that I expected. When I was in my maternity leave, I getting promoted was the last thing that I anticipated. But those are things that we tend to overlook while we talk about training, awareness. Inclusive leadership is something which is very, very critical for us to drive it. And what we could probably get is the most we can get is from reverse mentoring. You will hear a lot of things which you probably would have assumed differently.
I totally agree with you were saying, Minaya. Honestly, that sometimes I have also those problems, right? I mean, when we are trying to help the employee to say, oh, you know, I'm going to give them a better shift because I would assume that they have small children or they need to be with their family or they need to manage other stuff. I mean, you are trying to do your best, but actually you are hurting them, right? I mean, even that, because they may take it wrong. And that is why I totally agree also with Tasha, when she says we need to hear from the people, but we also need to ask them to tell us. I mean, and that is all the time what I do with a team. If you want something, speak up, right? I mean, and that is something that I also learned as a woman, right? As a woman, because I assume that my bosses should see what I was worthy of the next step because I was doing a great job. I didn't need to speak up. They will see by themselves what I could do. And then I learned that you need to speak up. I mean, that is what actually men used to do, right? And at least in some cases, it is difficult for us to do it, but you need to do it because you also cannot expect your boss to guess what you want, right? So you know, also you need to be vocal, and because of these things, right? In terms of why I'm not doing the night shift, if that is something that works better for me, or why why you are not being considered for the day shift if I'm single, because you're assuming that I don't want to have also life, I mean, with normal hours. But also, I mean, you need to be vocal because sometimes you cannot assume that your boss is not, as I said, reverse bias, or and even they are thinking that they are doing the best for you. It is not that they are trying to punish you or something, but sometimes it is because they do not know what you want, that they are trying to help you when they are actually not.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. That and this was interestingly something that came up in the morning session as well. That one needs to be vocal. So it's not always the responsibility of the manager, of the leadership of the organization to be inclusive. Sometimes we are blind. And that's what the Johari window says, right? There is a blind side to each one of us, and there are times that we are blind. So go ahead, educate us as well, that this is not how I would like to be treated. Sometimes maybe do it a little different. By remaining quiet, you're just adding to the feeling that everything is fine. And that hurts. So in the interest of time, I mean, I'm loving this discussion and the passion with which each one of you comes across with your points is absolutely great. I want a quick sentence maybe on why do organizations fail in DEI efforts. We'll start with Jacqueline, Tash, Vinaya, and Milena. Quick one sentence. Why do they fail?
Because they don't put in practice what they preach.
No practice what they preach. Yes.
One-dimensional thinking.
One-dimensional thinking. All righty, Vinaya.
Awareness, lack of awareness.
Lack of awareness. Milena?
Sometimes still trying to push metrics while actually working in changing culture.
Fantastic. So metrics versus culture, which one trumps? And thank you very much for that. That really is the crux, right? Of whatever we said today. Goals. Let's get the goals where the passion lies. Really, what do we want to do? Rather, what should we be doing, or what is what are the neighbors doing? You know, I think that more than that, what does my value system really make me do is where our goals should be seated. Next point, listening harder. I think acknowledging that each one of us is different, and it's fine. Not only is it fine, it's great to be different. If we were all the same, we would have a problem. Right, and I guess that's where things have changed. So acknowledging that we are different, celebrating that we are different, and reacting to how we are different, and how would we want to look at things differently, having dimensions to how we think, extremely important. Making sure that our matrices are seeped in culture, not in just matrices, is very important. Educating people and creating the awareness about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness is extremely important. Getting them sensitive to the fact that this is important. How you get treated is also how you treat other people. So be ready for it and be prepared for that, right? So thank you very much, ladies. It's been a fantastic discussion. I really enjoyed talking to each one of you. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Shiva. And I'm sure it's like the start of the day in terms of not the day, but the business day also for a lot of you. So so great for spending time with us and giving us those valuable insights. Dr. Shiva, over to you.
Thanks, Diti. It's been a wonderful discussion. Before we wind up, I thought I'll take the question that asked by one of the participants here.
Yeah, we had an answer to that by Tash. I think both of them.
If someone else would want to take this question with their perspective, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so the second question was, do you suggest work-life balance or work-life integration as the best concept for women leaders, because balance is not possible 50-50 all the time? Anybody would like to take that? Jackie, Melina, Vinaya?
I can answer. I think it depends on the priority of the individual at that point in life that the person is in, right? I'm not a big proponent to say that there is work-life balance. If I am somebody who wants to drive my career, that's the priority that I have, and I would probably have to work in that direction. And when I believe that this is the time I may not have to focus largely on my career, and maybe I need that little break for my life requirements, etc., I switch. So at least from my standpoint, I think it's an individual choice. That's my suggestion. And
I actually would agree.
Yeah, I just realized.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, DT. I just realized that my response to that was supposed to be in relation to Vinaya's point on when and I wrote Melina, so sorry about that. It was actually Vinaya, but yeah, same page. Sorry.
Yeah, and I'd give a personal example. The reason, October of 2022, going through severe health issues, family, elderly parents, etc., and a highly stressful job that could take me about 14 to 16 hours in a day. And that's when I decided to take a step back for personal mental health, for physical health, and reanalyze my priorities. So I totally agree with you, Vinaya. At some point in time, and it's not to do with a woman. It's not that I'm doing this because I'm a woman and I need to take that stand, but I'm doing it for me as a person. And maybe I'm at that stage in my life when I would like to take a step back, do things that I'm passionate about, because we all want to do. When I have time, I'm going to do this. Why can't that time be now? And that time needs to be now as per my priority. So I agree with you that it purely depends on the priority of the person concerned and the possibilities there.
And interestingly, Deepti, I'm seeing a lot of people, men as well, taking those little breaks to say, I need, as an organization, I'm seeing a lot of people coming in. It's not necessarily women as a concern, right? Coming in to say, I'd like to take this month off. And this is purely because I need to focus back on my mental health. And absolutely, it's okay, right? I think that's the trend that I'm seeing in the organization as well.
Yeah, I do agree that it's not a gender thing. I mean, it's across the organization depending on the role that you're having.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Does that, I think our WFM question was fairly detailed answered. So Dr. Shiva, over to you again.
Yeah. So if anyone would like to take this question, I think Tasha's already answered this.
Yes.
Anyone else would like to take this question? Jacqueline or
yeah, it's a WFM question. With the AI and automation progressing positively, how does WFM position itself or plan to ensure the role will always be an in-demand and irreplaceable or indispensable role?
I really see that as a tool, right? I mean, I do think that the AI is not going to replace eventually workforce management per se, right? I mean, of course, that the role will be changing, but it's going to be having additional tools to free up some of the time that we may be spending in getting those insights and then actually use our brain to do what comes after, right? I do not think that the role will not be less relevant. On the contrary, it's going to be more relevant because some things that we are spending time today are going to be done by AI, but then we need to do something with that. I mean, that is where our brains come into place and become the real consultative and advisors to the business in order to, we need to define and to tell what we are going to do with AI. So that is why I think that is definitely is going to change, because as I said, many things that perhaps we spend today doing, as Jacqueline was saying, that spreadsheet, macros, I mean, that kind of stuff are going to be taken care of, but then we're going to have more time to use our brains to actually move to the next step.
Okay. That's fantastic. Again, I don't have much of an insight on that, but I'm going to trust the experts here.
Oh, that's absolutely a true fact. Like, we have been talking about automation in WFM for quite a while. What is that we are going to do to make sure that we don't spend time in reports? How is that we can increase visibility, etc. So with the inclusion of AI, I absolutely agreed with Melina that that's going to just boost the practice of WFM. And that's going to make life a little easier for people. Again, just free up a little bit of the calendar, make sure that the time management increases, and that's going to push the workforce members to be experts, subject matter experts in the area. Having now automated tools that will be up there for us to give the right visibility to the business.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, for that additional insight. Do we have any other questions? No, I don't think we do. No.
Thank you so much for taking your time out. Dipti, thank you so much for moderating and conversing with the esteemed panelists. It's been a great learning for me personally, and I'm sure that this has created huge takeaways for the audience. And this is on live on Facebook. At the same time, we're going to publish this video of learning to rest of the folks around the world to watch whenever they want. This is going to be on our YouTube channel. I'm so privileged to have you for the Women Leadership Roundtable. It's been great, and this is the 5th year which we are doing it. We did face-to-face one in the beginning, and later got a chance to get all the people around the world to join in. We had a morning session with APAC and ANZ, and now with North America, EMEA, and Latin America. Has been a great conversational discussion. Dipti has done a wonderful job moderating morning, first session, and also this one. Thank you so much. I'm so humbled, and bottom of my heart, and on behalf of GWFM, we thank and really express deepest gratitude for all of your taken time out from your office work to share your thoughts and insights. It has been a privilege and great insights and great learning. It has created huge takeaways from this session. Thank you so much, Dipti, Vinaya, Melina, Tash, and Jackie. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Looking forward to connecting with you as well. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity, not just to moderate, but also to meet such wonderful, strong women across the world. Great to make your acquaintance, everybody.
Thanks the audience for wonderful questions. Looking forward to posting the video, and feel free to connect with us on our social media. Thank you.